Hey guys, it's Simon here from Simon German Photography. I had a few people asking how I edit my photos, and I learned a lot from YouTube, so trying to kind of give back to others so that they can learn. Um, this is not a tutorial. Like I said, I learned everything from YouTube. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I've picked up a few things that I could potentially pass on to you. So I figured why not give it a go. But yeah, it'd be far from perfect, sorry. We are gonna work on an astro image from Te Henga, where I managed to drop my camera and lens about 5 meters down the bank and scramble down the hill to luckily find it intact. First thing, open Lightroom. These are the raw images. We should be getting something like, which was the last one? Something like this. Hopefully, nice details in the Milky Way, not too grainy. First file. I like to do a basic edit on my raw files before stacking. There we go. Import. Now, while there's a lot in the editing, there's also a lot about what you do in the field. So I've got my sky shots shot at ISO 8000, 15mm, f3.2 and 13 seconds. I find that if I shoot any longer than 13 seconds, I start to get trailing. We see even at 13, they're not quite pinpoint. Get some coma in the corners, but even in the center you can see it's not quite pinpoint. So I see a lot of other people using this lens shooting at 20 seconds, 30 seconds, but I just don't like the results from that. So but obviously as a raw file, turn off sharpening, there's a lot of grain in there, but shooting on a D750, it's a bit of a beast in low light, so even at ISO 8000 there's not a lot of noise. But stacking them will help a lot. And then if we look at my foreground shots, so I tried a few just at 30 seconds. That's at 30 seconds. Just to see kind of how much detail I could get with that exposure. And then ended up doing a, there we go, 313 second shot. Should have done a couple of these, but you can see when I boost up the exposure how much detail we actually get back. Yes, there's some grain and some hot pixels, but we can deal with that. Whereas if we were just to use our 13 second exposure, that's the detail we get. Even at 30 seconds, you're losing a lot of detail to that noise. Go ahead and reset everything. So I like to do a basic edit on my sky shots. I've got 12 here to stack. Just go to one in the middle. Quick kind of subtle edits. Bump up the exposure a little bit. Always like the contrast. Highlights down a little bit. It's up. What we want to do is make sure we don't lose any detail in these hot parts of the Milky Way. You can actually click. See, we're clipping some highlights there. Like I said, just a basic, very basic edit and get your color balance that you like. Just basic, from there to there. Haven't really changed much. Select all, synchronize. Also, this is my first video, so I'm just gonna be rambling on a lot. um, Feel free to stop watching. Export. I'm gonna put this into a folder on my desktop. And I'm going to export these as a TIFF. No compression. We want as much detail as we can for stacking. That's going. I like to use Sequitur because it's free and does a fairly good job. And this is just going to be a quick stack. I'm not going to do too much detail. So pull all of those images that we've just saved. Output. Just name it stack TIFF. Okay. Now we come down here. That's so you've got align stars or trails. We want to align stars to stack them. If you have no foreground, you can use this sky region full area. Otherwise, you want to come down to here. You can do gradient if you've got like a nice flat horizon, but otherwise do irregular mask and draw onto the area that the sky is in. You can use this auxiliary highlight to show where the outlines are as well. The closer you get here, the better it's going to look, but I'm just going to do it quickly. Rough selection. Like that. Auto brightness, I don't usually do anything with. High dynamic range on. Mess around with these. And learn what you like, what looks good to you. I just do the sky, dynamic range, dynamic noises, and distortion. Hit start. It's going to stack everything and reduce the noise. Wait for this to finish. Like I said, this isn't a tutorial. It's just how I do things. If there's anything that you want to kind of learn more about or me to go over slower, then just let me know and I can do a video on specific things. This is just a one complete edit. Go, have our stacked image. One thing I forgot. Okay, this one here, which I do all the time. Composition, align stars, freeze ground. Start again. Yes. That looks better. Nice clean foreground. It'll just make it a lot easier when we come to blend our foreground and sky layers. Okay, that's been saved. Now I'm going to import that back into this one here, into Lightroom. Cool, and now if we compare stacked image here versus the unstacked here. Okay, I'm just going to confuse myself, so trying to get back to these two images that we actually started with. There's the stacked image. A few more basic edits here. Bump the exposure up a little bit, highlights down to stop blowing out those whites. Trying to get a bit of contrast into that Milky Way. Just check. Like that. We have our foreground image here. All we're worried about here is the foreground. Don't worry about what's happening with the sky. Shadows up. Highlights down, whites up a bit, blacks down. Just trying to bring out some contrast and some light in the image. These hot pixels we can get rid of later. Starting to look okay. Come down to some basic sharpening. Noise reduction just a little now. Can do more later. Looking alright considering. Then what we're going to do is try and match the exposures of these two images as close we can where they're going to merge. So it's this. Oh no, I want to do the other way around. So I can edit this right one. A little bit dark. Bring the exposure up a little bit more. Haven't lost any detail there. And then what we really want to do is get it looking similar at the horizon line. See, this is a lot lighter. So we can get it to blend a bit more naturally. Just gonna bump up the exposure there. Just to try and get them looking similar. Because this is going to merge with this. A little bit more. Noise reduction and sharpening on this image here. Something like that. Gonna click on both of them. Edit and Photoshop. Go, we have our two images. If they weren't aligned, you can auto align or just drag them around. But these ones look pretty good. Cool. Now, if you've got a nice clean horizon, you can just do a gradient or a brush with something like this with trees and rough edges. What I'd like to do is select the foreground and mask it. So come up here, selection tool. There we go, select a mask, and we can refine edge over here. Okay, if your computer's a little bit slow, it will hate this. Now what it's like. Just brush around the edges here. It's not going to be perfect, but it will be better. Alright, okay. Again, not perfect, but just trying to do this quickly. Then if you come down here and hit mask, and we see how that masks the trails and with the bad foreground. If we hit Control I, it will invert that mask and you get something like this. Now, edges, pretty rough in parts. Done a fairly decent job around the tree, but just need to clean this up. So on your layer mask selected, we want more of the sky to come out. Ooh, hit Control B for brush. Why is that not working? There we go. And just try and brush in as much as we can. We've got big patches there, just do a solid brush. Undo that. And when you have edges here like this, if you go down to your flow and change that to like 5%, then you can just slowly brush it back in. Change the color if you want to brush some of that foreground back out. Main thing to look up is, yeah, things like this, which there's kind of not too much you can do. I'm just going to use the tree from the sky layer. I'm back over here. Brush some of those trails back away. Not bad. And you can just kind of give it a touch on the edges. Be careful because you'll get dark patches like this. Just go back and lighten that up. Just kind of looking for anything weird. It's going to look a bit unnatural. Cool. Now that's a basic just sky blended with the foreground. But there's more to it than that. Alright, first thing. Foreground. See all these little hot pixels. If we come to click on the layer, noise, dust and scratches. Where'd they go? It's amazing, huh? So you can have a play around with this at the radius. So 2 seems to get rid of it. Increasing your threshold brings it back a bit. You are going to lose some detail by doing this, so you just kind of have to be careful and look around, but it does a pretty decent job. And all those hot pixels almost are all gone. You'll still have a few that you can clean up later. But that's looking pretty good. Now, I feel like it's just a bit kind of flat. So we'll bring curve in. Why is this so? Go. try and increase the contrast a little bit. Go. Now, there's kind of a few different ways you can do these things. So, a lot of people don't like cloning out objects and think it's cheating. If we've got a man-made structure here, you can just easily get rid of it. I'll leave them there for now. So looking pretty decent, to be honest. Just want to get a bit more pop and contrast in the sky here. Click on our image. Now what we can do, hit Control Shift Alt E. That'll just paste a layer of everything that's visible. And then what I want to do first is a bit of star reduction. So some of these stars on the outside here can be a bit distracting, and you really want to just focus on the bright stars in the center of the Milky Way. If I go to my filter, again, noise, dust and scratches, same thing we did to get rid of those hot pixels. It flattens the image, or like smooths out the image quite a lot, so that gets rid of these distracting things here. Play around with the numbers again, it depends how far you want to go with this. This is kind of the softness that I like. Okay. Now that softened it a lot. You still want those details in the Milky Way and in some of the brighter stars. So click on this layer, channels, hit Control and RGB, and that's going to select the brightest parts of the image. Come back to this layer here and put a layer mask on there. So what that does is just turning it on makes those bright parts of the image come back. So it's not doing a lot, but it's just a subtle and kind of helps make the Milky Way pop. What I then like to do is bring more of that back out in the Milky Way, so click on this layer mask, and we don't want it to be active in these parts, so again, low flow, and brush, just make it as soft as you can, and just kind of paint, just bring back some of those details where we want them. Again, looking pretty good at this point. What I really want to do now is just a little bit of a dodge and a burn, so again, Control Shift. I know I'm doing some destructive stuff here, but that's just the way I do. Color burn. Alright, obviously very dark. If you go to fill here, reduce this to say 2%, maybe a little bit more. Just looking at the sky here mainly, this area here, because we're going to get rid of the rest. That's just going to darken up those dark bits a bit. Alright, obviously too much. Gonna make a mask, Control I to invert it, and then just brush back in where I want it. Just with a soft brush, low flow. You're just adding that contrast where you want it. increase that even more, 5% flow. And just turn it off and on to make sure you don't actually end up overdoing it. Those places that you really want it to pop, just go more. Something like that, so you've got more contrast there. And then we want to do the same for the highlights, which I should have done first. Color burn we did, color dodge. Same thing, low fill. Just turn it off, see what it does. Not really a lot there, can go a bit more with this one. Layer mask again, invert it, brush, and just slowly over those areas that we want a bit brighter. It looks pretty damn good. Pretty much where I'd kind of end the editing in Photoshop. So I'm going to hit File, Save, jump back into Lightroom. And a few final kind of touches here. Just get rid of some of that noise. Don't want to lose too much detail. Like 15 is usually pretty good. Bit of sharpening. Here's when you can kind of get a bit more creative with it. Just try and make the Milky Way pop just a little bit more. Be very careful with the clarity. Do not want to go too far there. Just toggle that on. Just subtle. Finding that the sky is a bit pink and purple in the foreground, so just bring a little gradient here and kind of match them. Don't really like greens in night shots. It's kind of not very natural, so generally I'll bring my greens down to more of the yellowy side. Same again, pull the yellows back a little bit. Okay, clarity went too far. I'm just going to do a bit of a vignette. Instead of changing the exposure, actually, I'll just change the contrast. Nice and soft. Just going to draw the eye in a little bit to the center. background might just be a little bit dark, so I want to increase the shadows a little bit of contrast. I don't want to affect this area. I'll come down to the luminance, and I only want to affect the dark areas. So here's what we started with, a single. And here's our finished product. So yeah, I'm not sure how I'm going to actually break up this video because I'm just hitting at 40 minutes and there's a lot of just me rambling on. I might split it into 2 parts. And I'm going to hate listening back to my voice, but hey, you guys asked for it, so there it is, just a final. Oh. There we go. I hope you guys enjoyed it or learnt something. Like I said, if there's anything else that you actually want to learn a bit more in depth, let me know. Otherwise, thanks for watching.